Everyone. I am Rejoice on the Umatta Consulting podcast. Today we have the special privilege of speaking with Bruce. Bruce is the Vice President of Corporate Relocation at the Armstrong Company, and I would love for him to introduce himself as he sees fit so we can dive right into the questions. Bruce, the mic is yours, please.
Good morning. It's so good to see you, Rejoice. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate that. As you mentioned, I do work for the Armstrong Company. I just celebrated my 21st year in the organization.
Amazing.
That's
Wow. How does it feel?
Oh, it feels great. It feels great. We help companies move their people, their most trusted asset. And so, if someone is getting an offer and they need to relocate, that's where we come in and we help them with moving their furniture, setting everything up. If they need storage, we also help with commercial moving and other areas of moving as well. I also am an author. I like to speak and I host a podcast as well. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Bruce. Our first question for you. You've had a remarkable journey in corporate relocation and career mobility. Can you share a bit about your background and what led you to this specific field?
I love that word remarkable. It has been a remarkable journey and it's been, I like to call it peaks and valleys. And I
Mhm.
think we all go through that. And so my journey started back in the great state of Oklahoma, where I went to college and met my wife. I worked for my parents. They are still entrepreneurs. They own bowling centers.
Amazing.
And so I grew up bowling. And, I thought I might one day be a professional bowler. But during that journey, my wife started teaching and I was working nights and weekends. And we decided that we needed more alignment. And so we moved to Dallas, Texas back in 1995. I went to work for a moving and storage company. My brother was in the business and it gave me an opportunity to kind of get started. And I remember thinking at the time, hey, I got my degree. I'm getting ready to go work for an actual, corporation, and I'm just going to soar to success. And it was great until it all unraveled. And I spent about 8 years in operations and I learned a lot through really challenges and failure and just surrounded by the right people. And about 8 years later, I decided I wanted to pivot into the sales and marketing side. And I moved to the Armstrong Company. And my journey has been incredible ever since. I think one of the things that has been a key factor is getting involved in networking. And
Mhm.
I talk a lot about that, the importance of just surrounding yourself with people both inside the organization and outside the organization. I call it find your lane. You gotta find your lane in your work. And for me, it was really getting out and networking and learning some different areas that I could serve in my strength zone.
Amazing story. Love that. Love that. As you mentioned earlier, you're also an author and you have written several books, including Find Your Lane, as you mentioned, Change Your GPS or Change Your Career. What inspired you to write this book and how does it relate to your career transition in today's world?
Yeah, it's very interesting. When I joined the Armstrong company, I wanted to be different. I remember going into a sales and marketing role and thinking, I don't want to just be a salesperson. I want to be someone that can really serve, someone that can really add value. But I didn't know what that looked like. And I started networking, and I thought, my boss handed me a book called The Little Red Book of Selling. And in that book, there was a section in there. It talked about the author that wrote the book, Jeffrey Gitomer. He talked about a newsletter, how he sent out a newsletter, and I thought that's very fascinating. He pushed a button, and it reached 35,000 people. And I'm not sure 35,000 people were reading it, but they saw it. And so I started a newsletter. And then several years later, I kind of morphed that into a blog when people, blogs started becoming more popular. And And then in 2016, I was like, I'm ready to put all this together into a book. I had made a list, Rejoice. I had made a list when I first started. I had heard about this opportunity to write down. I'm a big goal setter, and I heard about hey, you should write your goals 10 years out as if you had achieved them. And so I decided to do that early in my career. I said, okay, well, I'm going to, be a 5-time President's Club winner, and I'm going to be married now for 30 years. And I'm going, and so I was as if I was 10 years out. And one of the
Right.
things I put in there was I was going to write a book. And 10 years later, I reviewed that list and I had achieved most everything on that list except writing a book. And so that's when I decided, hey, it's time to write that book. I wrote the book the next year, and I basically took a lot of my stories from my blog and put it into a book, and I called it Find Your Lane, Change Your GPS and Change Your Career. And the premise of the book is that, there are lots of different ways to have success. We just have to find the way that works for us. And so I share how, I pulled out, hey, I like how this person does networking. I like how this person approaches people. I like how this person, I like their energy. I like how this person has purpose. And, you just keep pulling those things out and making them your own. And then you find your lane and you can serve others. And so that was behind the book. It's done very well. It published in 2017, and it's still, it's still doing very well.
Amazing. I love that. I love that. And I love all the transitions into different things that were happening for you to put that into your book. And I guess going along with what you're sharing with us, finding your lane, many people, as you know, are in the position of trying to refigure out what they want to do in the era of AI, digital changes, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And AI is transforming many industries, as you know, including corporate relocation. How do you see AI impacting employee mobility and career transitions?
Well, I think AI is going to continue to impact, every industry. And I remember when I first started in moving and storage, how I remember the internet coming. I was like, what's the internet?
Yeah.
What's happening here? And I think it's just like anything else. You got to figure out how to adapt. It's interesting. And it really is all about change, and change is hard. And I tell people all the time, I like change when it's my idea.
Yes.
But recently our organization, we started incorporating our survey platform into it's an AI survey platform, and basically kind of rewind. Before the pandemic, nobody wanted a video survey. And when I say a survey, it's when you walk through the home and you inventory all the items are going to be moving. Okay, this bed's going, this nightstand's going, this sofa's going to be going. We're going to move these things. We need to pack these things in boxes. And everyone wanted the surveyor to be in the home. And then when the pandemic, of course, came, everybody wanted this video survey.
Right.
And I remember before that, I was reluctant. I didn't want to do a video survey. I was like, I want to be in the home. I want to connect with the person. I want to help them. I want to answer those questions. And then, of course, when we shifted to the pandemic, I was forced to shift. Is either what is that adage, adapt or die? And so I adapted and I learned the virtual survey. And then what I found was a couple of things. Number one, people love it because it's convenient. They can do a virtual survey at 7 in the morning or 6 at night, and they just take their phone and they just walk through their home. And then the second thing that I learned was that it's very accurate. I was thinking, wow, well, maybe when the customer walks around the home, they don't show us everything in that closet, and then all of a sudden we're not going to have the accuracy we had before. And we found it's extremely accurate. And so, and then fast forward to today with AI, now we have this survey platform where families they can upload a video, we can do a virtual survey, or we can go in the home. And what we're basically doing is we're taking pictures, and AI will capture
Oh,
those
wow.
items. It will say, and then when you leave the room, it's already calculated all the inventory with you. Now, let me say about AI a couple of things. Number one, you still need a human to go in and review that. You just do. And so I heard the CEO of Sherm, John A.C. Taylor Jr.,
Hmm.
talk about how people aren't going to lose their jobs to AI. People are going to lose their jobs to the people that learn how to use AI. And so AI is here. AI is going to help us in a lot of different ways. As a matter of fact, my first few surveys took me several hours to do, where before I could do them very quickly. And I thought, oh man, this is really taking a long time. But here, fast forward a month, 2 months later, and I'm able to do them almost as quick as I was. And it just continues to get better. And what's even better is that the van operators and the moving crews, they also have more information to be able to service that customer as well. And so I think AI is here to stay, and it's up to us to learn it. I will say this though about AI, and I heard a good friend of mine share this one time at a conference, and she said, "You just need to remember that AI doesn't inspire, though."
That is true. That is very, very true. Very, very true. So I guess going along with that, in finding your lane, you discussed the importance of changing GPS for career success. What are some of the key professionals? What are some key steps professionals can take to stay adaptable in today's fast changing world?
Oh, I love that GPS. So GPS stands for Grow, Plan, and Share. And I remember many, many, many years ago when I was handed it was a cassette tape. So, it's been a long time ago. I was struggling as a manager in my department. I was having some personnel challenges. I was having some, I was having some me challenges. And, I was handed an audio tape. It was a John Maxwell tape.
Wow.
And I remember for the first time when I was playing that tape, it felt like I had a coach. I felt like it was giving me confidence. And mostly it gave me hope. Like, oh, I can do this. There's people out there that can help me, whether it's through books or cassette tapes or managers or mentors or whoever it is. But we have to be open to going on that journey. And that journey is a growth journey. And I've been studying growth and leadership now for over 25 years. And what I found from high performers is that that's part of the process, continuous improvement. And when you talk to a high performer, they are always looking for ways to grow. They're always looking for their value. And so GPS, G stands for growth. We got to have a growth plan. And I've had a growth plan for many, many years, from reading books to listening to podcasts to getting certifications and to listening to these podcasts. So thank you for doing this.
Absolutely.
Rejoice. And so G stands for growth, P stands for plan, and being really purposeful in planning. And I remember before when I would wake up and go to work and just not have really a plan for the day. And just however the day went is where I went. And what I found was when I was purposeful in my planning, I went from managing my day to leading my life.
Wow.
And I remember starting to make that part of my habit. So I started with, okay, I'm just going to plan my day. Today, I've got my whole year planned out for the most part on all my big events, and then each week I'll go through and I'll do planning. But I remember a story, and this is really what changed a lot of things for me. And I was playing golf with an executive, and he was telling me about all these incredible golf places that he had played all around the world. And I looked at him and I said, this is fascinating, but you're the top business leader. You're the CHRO. How do you find time to play golf so much? And he said, I schedule it.
Mm.
And it was really an epiphany. Like, hey, you know what? Whatever you schedule, you're going to do. So I talked about the importance of planning your roadmap in the book. And
Mm,
so anytime you go on a journey, you're gonna look at your GPS. Hey, where do we need to go? And a lot of times we're not doing that. And so P stands for planning, and S stands for sharing, being a resource, being a sharer of resources. And so one of the things I'm very active on the social media platforms, LinkedIn, of course, in particular. And I'm always looking for things that will add value that I can share with others, not just sharing a post, but it might be something that I'm driving down the road and I'm like, oh, I just heard this, or I capture quotes or whatever that is. I want to share that with others because it really is true. The more you give, the more you get. You don't give to get,
yes.
but the more you give, the more you get. And I want people to know that, listen, if you will be in growth mindset, if you will be purposeful in your planning and in everything you do, and you share with others, it will all come back tenfold. And you will have incredible joy, not only in your career, but in everything you do. And that's the premise of the book, Find Your Lane.
I love that. I love how you summarize that in a very profound way. You have another book called Mile Makers, a guide to navigating life transitions. You offer insights on personal and professional growth. Can you share a key lesson from the book that applies to relocation and career mobility, please?
Yes, as a matter of fact, so I have four books now, and the second book I wrote was a book called Mile Markers, and that book is a journal, and that journal is filled with over 200 inspirational quotes. And the reason why I wrote that journal, I've been journaling ever since my wife purchased me a journal when my grandmother was dying
Oh,
many years ago, and I started writing in this journal. And then I decided one day I was like, I want to create my own journal, and I want to create it to where I called it mile markers to go along with Find Your Lane, but it's a 5 year journal. So each page has a different section you can write on. And here's what I found. People don't have time to journal every day, long paragraphs. They just don't. So I made it very simple. There's, three or four lines on each page. And if you don't journal that day, that's okay. You just whatever day you're on. And then the next year you go through and you journal right under your last year's entry. And then 5 years later you can look and see what you did on every for the last 5 years on that day. You can look and see your journal. And that journal actually came out and right before the pandemic. So a lot of people that have the journal today talk about all the things that they talked about during the pandemic. And what I tell people is this, a couple of things. Number one, when you finish that book, that will be a treasure for the next person that holds it. Might be your son or your daughter or your granddaughter or your grandkids or their grandkids one day.
right.
Maybe a different, multiple generations get to look at that journal, and that's very important. But the second thing is, I always talk about how we need to write down, and in the workplace, you can use that for, maybe it's something you're thinking about that day, and you just kind of capture that note, and then, you look back at it, and you look back at it, right, and you can see some of the different things that you were thinking about. But I always talk about the 3 question rule, and the 3 question rule is this: in the workplace, if somebody asks you a question, and you hear that question more than 3 times or more, you need to turn that into a product or a service or a policy change or something, because
Yeah,
somebody else is asking or
right.
thinking about that same question. They just aren't asking it. And so when you capture these things, or maybe your boss, says, hey, we need to, uh, put together this policy or this initiative or just some ideas. It can be an idea thing or whatever the case may be, but it's a way for people to capture things that they want to write down each day. A lot of times people will tell me they capture their gratitude, through their ups and downs. And then of course, Life in the Leadership Lane mirrored my podcast, Life in the Leadership Lane. I took some information from all the high performers on the podcast, and then today I just published Drive with Purpose, and that's more around purpose in people's everyday.
I love that. I love that. I feel like self-reflection is an understatement or
Mm,
undervalued.
mm.
It's so powerful to hear you speak and also live the experiences that you have had, and also make sure you document it, or jot it down for others to sort of walk through. I know you have also written the 7 steps to finding your career GPS. Can you walk us through the steps and how you can help professionals take control of their career, especially this time?
Yeah, that actually came from my last book, Drive with Purpose, and the subtitle of that book is called "Move Your Career from Success to Significance." And what I tell people is that we have all had some type of success, but when we have it, like we move on and we're looking for more. I remember when I bowled my very first 300 game, I was so excited. It was like success. And then a week later, I came back and I was ready for another one.
Yes.
And so success is achievement, but significance, that's real impact. And what I like to talk about is how we need to go beyond success and really move towards significance, because when we have significance in our career, success will just follow us. It just will. And so when I talk about the 7 different things you talked about to drive with purpose, those 7 things are: number one, first thing we need to do is we need to define success, because if we don't define it, somebody else is going to define it for us, and then all of a sudden we may be disappointed. And so we need to define success. Maybe we just need to define success for that meeting that we're going to have that day, or for the day, or for the week. We know we have what we at the end of the year success for the company, right? We want to, we want to generate so much revenue. We want to have so much in profit. We want to have our quality scores where we need them
Yes.
to. We want to have good safety scores. All of that, the company. But we personally need to know, like, what is success to us. And then significance,
Mm,
pursuing significance. And I remember when I really started thinking about this was when I had started with my company. I was in a sales role. And so, of course, my eyes are on sales. I need to generate
right.
revenue. And a banker, I had a friend call me and tell me his banker needed to move his mom. And I was like, that's fantastic. Who doesn't love a referral?
Right.
And so I called up the banker. I said, "Hey, how can I help?" And he said, "Well, I actually need to move my mom. We're moving her from assisted living. We're going to move her from Dallas to Houston. It's not that much, Bruce." And I was like, "Hey, I'm ready, man. I'm ready. I need some business." And I went down and I met her, and she showed me her bed and her little nightstand, their little vanity, and that's all she needed to move, maybe a couple of boxes. It really wasn't much, but it was a lot. It was a lot too. I could tell it was really stressful on the banker, not necessarily on her. And so we moved her, and I remember I had a different feeling. For the first time, I felt like, wow. I used to think before, like, hey, I have these friends that have these careers that are really making a difference. They're lawyers and doctors, and I'm moving people, and I had that, like, that move really created that mindset, like, you are really helping people in a very stressful time. And so I really just started doubling down on significance, like really pursuing significance. How can I help people? How can I give people hope? I like to use the acronym HOPE, HOPE, helping other people every day. How can I give people hope? And so significance, when you chase significance, success will follow you. And then talk about having a purpose driven mindset. And that's all about failure. We're going to have failure. We just are. How are we going to bounce through failure? How are we going to create the right perspective? Because, there's no success without failure. So we have to have that mindset, like, hey, we're going to have failure. And when we're having failure, we just need to remember that success is like we are driving with purpose. We are in the right lane because it includes failure. And then I talk about the importance of networking with intention. And I share some stories in the book how we can network inside our organization. We can network out in the community. We can network online with
Right.
social media.
Right.
And there are some strategies that we can use that we can help people, not just connect with people, but help people. And then talked about the importance of leading without a title. And a
That's
lot of
true.
people think that they need a title to lead, and you don't. And our chairman of the board shared some wisdom with us one time, and he said, "There's these four things that we all can do to be better salespeople." And I really thought, this is not just better salespeople. This is to be a better person. And he talked about living by the golden rule: treat people how you want to be treated, from the president to the person that sweeps the floor.
Amazing.
Right. Be humble and have great humility. And he talked about making people around you better. And he talked about the importance of being generous, big or small, it will change your life. And then lastly, he talked about having good manners, because uh, manners will take you places ability won't. And I thought to myself, do you need a title for any of those things?
No.
No, you don't have to be the vice president or the director or the manager for any of that. You can just lead. So I talked about the importance of leading without a title. And then two other things, ethics. You got to have ethics if you're going to drive with purpose. And I share some stories about early in my career where I was around the room. I was a very young manager, and we were having it was kind of a values exercise, and where you circle your top 5 values and then you number them, what's important to you.
Yes.
I just remember I was very young. I didn't really know what integrity meant. I didn't, that word, like integrity, what is that? But when
Right.
the trainer said who all has integrity, said number one, highest priority, and I saw all the leaders raise their hand, I said, I need to know what that is. And so today it's important, super important to me. And I tell people all the time, it's just like the Brene Brown book, Dare to Lead. She says everybody should know their two most important values. When somebody asks, like just like that, you should just know them, because that's going to drive your everyday, your decisions. And so ethics has got to be part of that. And then the last thing is building a career roadmap.
Mm,
Like you need to know where you're going, just like the find your lane, the GPS. If you're going to drive with purpose, you've got to build a roadmap. Who do I want to be? Who do I want to be known for? How do I want to act? How do I want to serve people? And all of these things go within that roadmap. And when you have all of that together, you're driving with purpose, and your journey is just different in your career. And if people can just get started, they'll find incredible joy.
amazing. Amazing. Love that answer. How do you see the future of work evolving? I know you're extremely involved in SHRM. You talk to leaders, HR leaders all the time, and also executive leaders as well, especially when it comes to remote work, AI, and global trends. What is your perspective on this?
I think the future of work is here. I just do. I think that we figured out how to work remotely. Look at us today. We're doing video. I remember when I started my podcast, I didn't even know what the platform that I was on. I didn't know what it was. I did Teams and Zoom and all of these different Riverside, and I didn't
Yes.
know what all these platforms were. And so we figured it out. And I think that's what it's going to be. It's like we got to continue to figure out. Yes, you're going to have organizations that say, hey, we need to, come back to the office, but you're still going to have remote work. You're still going to have that. And I think AI is here to stay. I think AI is showing us how to, hey, we just got this briefing. Let's put it into AI. And now all of a sudden we have 10 bullet point summary.
Right.
It's going to help us in so many different ways. And I think we're going to figure out ways to do things better. We're going to figure out how to serve more better. I think the reviews, today we're seeing, what do you do when you go try to find a company? You look at their reviews, don't you? I
Yes.
think that's going to matter. But here's what I also think. I also think that in-person networking is going to be important, because
Mhm.
we're going to be dealing with bots and AI and all of these different things. And sometimes we don't know if we're talking to a real person. I mean, it's going to be that good. So we've got to get out and we've got to talk to people. And so, as I mentioned earlier in the show, that AI, it won't inspire, humans inspire.
Right.
And so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to be very purposeful in building our networks and going out and continuing to connect with people, serve with people, help people, give people hope. And I think that's the future. And if you're not out there building your network, you're going to get lost in the shuffle. You just are. And also, when you go out and network, you learn from people to take, and you can add value to your own organization. And so I think it's important. So we're going to see, yes, I think the future of work is here. But I do think we've got to be very intentional about the human aspect of it along the way. So adding, what is it, HI with
Yes.
AI is going to equal good things ahead.
Amazing. Final question for you. If someone listening to you today is feeling stuck in their career, what is the one advice you would offer them?
Oh, that's such a great question, because I've been stuck. And I remember when that person handed me the tape, and all of a sudden it gave me a spark. And so I think I use this acronym, and it's called ACT. And ACT stands for Action Changes Things. And a lot of times when we get stuck, it's because we're not taking action on anything. So I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to write down, like, what do we want to try to do, or some things that we would like, and then we need to take action on them. And so, for example, there is an association for everything. Whether it's for SHRM, you have 31 chapters in the state of Texas. You have 550 chapters across the U.S. You have, but you have all these other organizations too, from recruiting organizations to compensation organizations. You have I remember when I joined my organization, I started attending like NetWeavers and BNI and all these different Toastmasters, all these
Yes.
different associations. But what I found is that I couldn't serve them all. I had to figure out what lane worked best for me. I had to find my lane in the networking. So I would encourage someone to do a couple different things. Number one, I would encourage them to decide who they want to be. Like, okay, I want to find some people that you like inspire you, and don't try to copy them, but emulate what they do. Like, oh my goodness, Rejoice, she has a podcast, and Bruce, he wrote a book, but what do they do? And maybe even connect with them on social and try to follow them and learn from them. But at the end of the day, you've got to write down, maybe you start with some goals. Write down a few goals, and just like I did, I wrote down all those goals that I wanted to achieve, and I didn't achieve them all. And next thing you know, I'm like, hey, I didn't achieve this. Write down some goals and work on achieving those. But I would say, most importantly though, make sure part of the goals is building a network. You've got to connect with people, because that's where you're going to learn. That's where the joy in the journey is connecting with people. I always say your network is your net worth. And as you build your network, your net worth will just soar. And I hope that helps. There's a lot of information in the book, Find Your Lane. And I think you'll enjoy it. It's a very quick read. It actually just won the one of the top career change books of all times from Book Authority, and so that was pretty exciting whenever I saw that. But I hope you enjoyed that. I think it'd be helpful.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those details with us. Words of wisdom, your encouragement, and also giving us insights about AI, creating your goals, networking, finding your lane, and making sure that you follow your journey through life. Thank you, Bruce. Any last words before we close today?
I just want to say thank you so much, Rejoice, for having me on the show and giving me an opportunity to share some perspective. I remember when my boss would take me to these different leadership conferences, and I'd learn from so many different people, and I remember thinking, so their stories just inspired me, and I was just like, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. And now here I get to do this today, it's truly it's an honor. I'm very grateful. And if anybody wants to connect, just feel free to reach out and connect, and I'll try to be a resource however I can.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And to all our listeners, thank you for listening today. and next time.